guys, and welcome back. In the last nursing video that I did post, I talked about the different specialties I've had over my 10 years of nursing, and I said I would make a video going more in depth into the different specialties and what I like or dislike about each one of them. So we are going to jump right in. And some of the specialties I may group together just because they're pretty similar or I had similar experiences with them. So we'll start with surgical oncology. So this was right out of nursing school, first job. It was a very fast-paced unit. Definitely, and I love that about it. With the surgical oncology, you can get like a little bit of everything. I love that it was like fast-paced, it was very like in-depth, and you got to take care of post-surgical patients, you got patients ready for surgery, you would see multiple patients many times, so you kind of were able to build somewhat of a relationship with some of the patients. I did enjoy that you would work with a lot of the same surgeons, so we had some really great surgeons, so I enjoyed working with them. You kind of learn the surgeons and the surgeons kind of learn the nurses, so it's always great when that happens. So the nurse to patient ratio was 5 to 6, which could get kind of crazy sometimes if you had pretty acute patients. If you're getting like 2 or 3 surgical patients at once, then that does make it a little bit more difficult, but that was very rare. So most of the time you would only get like 1 to 2 fresh post-op day 1 patients, and then you would have some post-op day 3 or 4 patients. So it was kind of balanced in that aspect of it, but I did love that it was fast-paced, it was specialized. I built rapport with a lot of the patients, and I enjoyed just seeing them progress from there. Although it was sad when some patients had to come back for multiple surgeries, it was nice to kind of see their progress over time. But the bad side of it, though, there were some times when patients are very sick and they're there multiple times, or they're there for several months, and that is definitely hard on the patient, and in turn it is difficult for the nurse to see that. The other thing that was, I would say, was more so on the con side is patient ratio. It was 4 to 6 technically, but you could get 6 patients, and sometimes just depending on the room layout, you could end up with like 2 fresh post-op patients, which isn't always the best, because when I get a fresh post-op patient, I like to give them my full attention, make sure everything is great, there are no complications or anything like that. So when you have more than one, then you're kind of forced to kind of spread out your time and kind of make sure both of the new post-op patients are doing well and have no complications. But on the good side of it, that floor definitely helped with my multitasking skills, with my efficiency. If a patient calls for something, then you're like, okay, let me check the chart, and I'm going to go ahead and take this antibiotic. I'm going to give them these meds and do everything while I'm going in the room, as opposed to going in 3 and 4 times. So it definitely forces you to kind of be efficient, be effective, be proactive, and think ahead and think quick on your feet. So I did love that aspect of it.
I was also able to practice and master so many practical nursing skills, which I really love that, especially right out of school.
And I feel like it was a great floor to be on, especially right out of nursing school. You learn a lot, you get acute patients, you get some stable patients. It definitely helps develop your critical thinking skills, and you're monitoring things very closely to make sure there are no changes, no mishaps, no complications or anything like that. So it definitely helps with critical thinking, with time management, with delegation. It definitely helps with that as well, because you have to decide, what do I need to do as a nurse, or what can I delegate to someone else to do. It helped to make me even more of a well-rounded nurse, especially coming right out of nursing school. And I felt like I felt more comfortable quicker as a new nurse because of it. And I was actually like precepting other nurses by my 1-year mark, so I thought that was pretty awesome. It just depends on like what you're looking for. So take the pros and cons and see, does it sound like me? Does it sound like something I would like? It is fast-paced, very, very fast-paced. It challenges you for sure. The next one, I would say orthopedics. So I liked orthopedics. I really did. I enjoyed it. I liked the aspect of, patients coming in. They have a joint that's been bothering them usually for years, and it's so painful and it's uncomfortable, and they're just like sad and just upset about it. And then afterwards, they are just so happy and they're excited, and they are just so open to like, oh my gosh, the new possibilities of everything I can do with this new joint replacement. Everyone was so happy afterwards. When you have a patient who has suffered for so long and they get that relief, it just like warms your heart and it just makes you so happy. So it can be fast-paced as well. Again, sometimes you could get 2 post-op day 0 patients at the same time and you're like, okay, I have a knee coming to this room, I have a hip coming to that room. So you definitely have to kind of stay on top of everything and make sure you're monitoring the patients, monitor labs, monitor their circulation, watch that joint, make sure they're doing everything they're supposed to do. It's very fast-paced. You definitely have to watch out, monitor for circulation, monitor for any blood clots or anything like that. In the CPM machine, you have to make sure the degree is right. You have to make sure they're getting up and sitting down properly so that they don't displace the joint. Like, there are very specific things that you can and cannot do with a joint. So it's a lot of teaching, a lot of educating the patient and the family as well, and a lot of being there and being supportive for them. At the same time, you have to watch your post-op day 1 patient while you're also watching this post-op day 0 patient, and then you have a patient who's been there for a couple of days and maybe they're having like a complication, but you have to keep an eye on them as well. So you got to be in multiple places at once. You have to delegate, you have to be efficient, assertive, you have to do it all. I loved that it was quick and fast-paced and you're on your toes and you're like busy and you could see a little bit of everything. You could take care of the, watch the incision side, you take care of the incisions, educate the patient if they have like a drain, even like an ostomy, anything like that. Like, you have to like teach the patient, educate them, you have to show them how to do it, because most patients are going home and they have to monitor it themselves. So a lot of teaching and education as well. So I feel like those specialties were very like spot on for me. I loved it. I enjoyed all of it. I loved being quick and fast paced, having to manage my time. I had like my little sheet that I would write everything down on, and you have to get a system. So you have to get a system to make sure you're staying on top of everything, and it works out. And I just felt like the unit kind of helped me to like just reach my potential even faster. You have to kind of just like move things around and just kind of be flexible and work with what's going on, or God forbid if there's a code or anything that really throws a wrench in things. But the goal is to kind of catch things in labs or vital signs or anything that may be off, catch it ahead of time so that you do not end up with the code. You get to see a little bit of everything, you get to do a little bit of everything, and it was just a great experience for me. And I stayed on that unit for a couple of years, so I definitely enjoyed it. Again, if you are looking for something a little bit different, then there are so many specialties out there. There's not shortage on specialties, so just keep going until you find what you like. Okay, so the next one, progressive, telemetry, step down, all of those, the acuity of the patients are, I would say they're higher. So it was like 3 to 4 patients per nurse, and the patients are just a little sicker, they have a little bit more going on, and they're possibly there for longer periods of time. But again, you have to just make sure you are like efficient in your work, you're staying on top of things, you're monitoring the patients closely, watch if they have any changes in their consciousness or how they're just looking, because sometimes patients don't always tell you. You have to kind of evaluate them for yourselves, and that's definitely more these units, because sometimes the patients aren't completely alert or with it, so it's your job to do that. And although you do have fewer patients, it's still very quick and fast paced, because like I said, they are sicker patients and they have a little bit more going on. If you want fewer patients that are a little bit higher acuity, then that unit is good. It's definitely a lot of critical thinking and monitoring and evaluating and just looking at things like that. But you could be, and it also depends on the unit. Honestly, everything I'm talking about with the specialties, the specific specialties, are just my experience with them. Different units, different hospitals, different states, that same specialty can be something completely different. So again, this is just my experience with all of the different specialties. So it helps with time management and delegation and evaluation and efficiency and all of that. So I think those units are good for that as well. Hemodialysis. So I think out of all the specialties I've worked, hemodialysis was the most interesting to me. I've always been like just in awe at this like huge machine that's almost my height, where it like removes the blood from a patient's body, cleans it, and then returns it to the patient's body. And it's a process that can take 3.5 to 4.5 hours, just depending on the patient. But I've always just been so interested in that. So when I got into hemodialysis, I was just so intrigued. It's very, very specialized, more specialized than the previous departments I've worked at. Really dive into the kidneys and all things kidney, and you just learn so much about it, and you learn about the machine and how to cannulate a patient and connect them to the machine, and slight changes can alter the patient's entire day or entire week. So it's a very, very specific and particular specialty. You have to just be very on top of everything, down to the patient's weight. Depending on what the patient weighs, that's going to alter how much fluid you pull off of them. And you have to go based off of their blood pressure as well. And are you going to give them some potassium or take down the sodium? And it's very very intricate, and the slightest little adjustments can literally make a patient feel terrible or feel amazing. So you really have to kind of evaluate. It's so specific for each patient. It's not like a broad thing oh, everybody's gonna do this. And no, it's so much more to it. And I love that aspect of it. It's so in-depth and in details, and you add the fluids and the EDW and the dry weight, and all of this comes together, and you have to look at the patient's labs, and based on what their labs were for last week, are you going to give them a special medication for their blood? Are you going to hold this medication? Are you going to give them something give them a little extra fluid if they're not feeling well? That is the most specific, specialized place I have ever worked, and I loved it. I was so interested. It is a lot of huge needles. You use 14, 15 gauge needles, which are larger than the smaller 22, 23 gauge needles, and you're cannulating the patient, and you have to pull the blood out, monitor the patient. So I think I love that aspect of it. It was so specialized, and you learn so much about the kidneys and the patient, and how it affects the patient, and what all is connected to the kidneys that you wouldn't even think about. So much is connected to the kidneys, and it's affected by so many different things. You have to learn special things in what they eat, how they sleep, what medication they take, and all of that is just all interconnected. At the unit that I work, there are 2 nurses, about 6 techs, and maybe 25 patients, all in this one huge room, where the nurse, you can literally stand up and look around the room. So if someone isn't looking right, you kind of can keep an eye on them. But the nurse has so much autonomy in the outpatient hemodialysis. I really enjoy that. So pretty much the nurse runs the unit, and the doctor comes maybe once a month. So, and if you need anything, you can always, contact the doctor and get new orders. But you are pretty much the one that is caring for the patient. You have to say, hey, my patient has this going on, or my patient was hospitalized, let's cut back on it, or my patient had a heart attack, so we need to be gentle on the heart the next few treatments, or we need to adjust the dry weight because the patient was very sick. And you have to be very on top of everything, and it's so specialized and so specific. You definitely have a lot of autonomy, and you're controlling more things. So if you that aspect of it, then you would love outpatient hemodialysis. It is very autonomous, and you can run things the way that you want to, and it's so interesting as well. See the same patient 3 days a week, about 3 to 4 hours a day. So you do build a connection and a relationship with the patients, which is really nice. The con side of that is sometimes patients get sick, and they get hospitalized, or other things happen, and it is very sad. And that does take a toll on you after a while, and also with other patients, because these patients, they become family. They dialyze with each other for so many years that they're all family. So it's definitely hard on everyone when something like that happens, or a patient gets very, very sick and hospitalized. So that is the downside of it. Wellness and hyper wellness. So there's a few things you can do with the wellness or the hyper wellness. The main thing is IV hydration. So the patients, well, they're not even patients, they're clients. The clients come in, and they want an IV and hydration and vitamins and minerals and all of that good stuff. But then you also can give oxygen, STD sleeves, and even the hyperbaric oxygen chamber. So those are a few other things. The cryotherapy, the heat therapy. There's several things that you can do with the wellness and the hyper wellness. And so this is a very different patient population. These patients are not sick. Most of them are well. They're extremely well and healthy, and they're just wanting to take steps to get even healthier or to continue to stay healthy. So that's a very different aspect of it, as opposed to being in a hospital or, like I said, an outpatient center where patients are critically ill or chronically ill. So I enjoyed that. You start an IV. You give a patient like a liter of fluids, you give them vitamin K, vitamin B6, 12, like so many vitamins and minerals. Some people even get like pain injections, or you can give them like so many different things that they can just keep them nice and healthy and well. People would even come and get oxygen, just, you know, hyperoxygenate the patient. And we even have like the hyperbaric oxygen chamber where the patient gets in there and they really enjoy getting that oxygen. But we do sometimes, we would get patients that were sick and they needed like that oxygen therapy, or they needed like an IV therapy. But most of the time the patients are, like I said, very, very well. So yeah, that's a very different aspect for me. And then in that setting, it's just one nurse at a time, and then you have the clients that come in. The most clients you would get at a time is like 5 or 6, but once you like start the IV bag or get the patient in the hyperbaric chamber, then you're good for like an hour. 95% of them were completely well, and they just wanted to stay well. So that's where the wellness and the hyper wellness came from. Not acute care, so of course like the hours are more so like 5 days a week, as opposed to, you know, in the hospital where it's only 3 days a week. Now, the hemodialysis was 3 days a week, but sometimes it could be 4, and you would work from 5 a.m. until like when the last patient was done. Acute care, you guys know, in the hospital is usually like 7 to 7 or 6:30 to 6:30 or longer, just depending on what's going on with your patients. And then you can't leave the clinic until all of the patients are gone. So that just depends on the patient transportation ride isn't here yet. Then you have to kind of wait for that time. So that was one thing that I wasn't crazy about, that aspect of it. With the wellness and hyper wellness, you start about 9, I think, is the earliest that I would start, and you can go until like 5 or 6, just depending on like how many patients you schedule. And some people don't prefer that. They prefer the 3 days, 3 days doing longer hours. I've done both. I used to like the 3 days going, you know, the 12 hours a day, but I've kind of moved more towards like the normal like Monday through Friday schedule, and I feel like I enjoy that more. Outpatient surgery. So the final specialty and position that I currently hold, outpatient surgery. So things I like about outpatient surgery. Surgery center that I work at has a little bit of everything. So I work in pre-op and PACU. I actually do not work in the OR. I feel like it will be very interesting for me, but I'm a very like cold-natured person, so I can barely handle pre-op and PACU. So I don't think I would be able to ever do OR, but I think it would be very interesting for the people who work in it. They all enjoy it. So we get there at 5 a.m. and we kind of stagger in and out, just depending on the surgeries and the day. But usually you start around 5 or 6 a.m. and the patients come in, you kind of get them prepped and ready for surgery. You make sure everything is all good, there are no complications or anything that you're concerned about. First, the doctor comes, the anesthesiologist comes and talks with all the patients, and you go through that whole process, and then you send them off to the OR. And then if I'm working in PACU, then I will get them when they come out, and then take care of them from there and give them discharge instructions and send them on with their family. I like the aspect of outpatient surgery just because you still get to like have your nursing skills, but it's not as stressful or fast-paced as the hospital. It has its own different pace that is fast, but it's just different from acute care. And it's also because the patients aren't as sick, because if you're in an outpatient surgery center, you have to be fairly well to have surgery outpatient as opposed to having it in a hospital somewhere. You still have to go through their H&Ps, make sure everything is good. If you have any questions, you kind of bring it up to the anesthesiologist, and they go through everything. And then you get an IV started. If they need antibiotics or any pre-op meds, then you go ahead and give those to them. Multiple patients over a shorter period of time, I'll say that, as opposed to having like the same 5 or 6 patients, 4 to 6 patients throughout the entire day. That's kind of have a flow, and you just go through that flow, and it just all works. So I really enjoy it. It is a Monday through Friday job, and it starts early. So with outpatient surgery and also with hemodialysis, you're starting at 5 a.m. So that means you're waking up like 3:30, 4 o'clock, every day. So that's an aspect that some people do not like about it, that you have to wake up so early, but I'm completely fine with waking up early. I like getting an early start. With the surgery center, we stagger in, so if I have to stagger in at like 7, it's so different. Like, you run into all the traffic, everybody's out, and it's just so different. Whereas if you're on the road at 5 and like literally nobody is there, it's dark when you get to work. So pros and cons of that. But I like to schedule like a normal like Monday through Friday schedule, so I have like evenings off, I have the weekends off, so that's just, it works really well for my schedule now. Never any nights or weekends, because the surgery center actually closes, as opposed to a hospital that's open nonstop around the clock. The surgery center closes, so that's nice. The hemodialysis clinic, the wellness center, weekends for the wellness and the hyper wellness, weekends for Saturdays for hemodialysis. But the surgery center is just like Monday through Friday, no evenings, no weekends. So that's really nice. So you just gotta have to go with like what works for your schedule, what specialty do you enjoy, what type of nursing do you enjoy? Do you enjoy having the autonomy? Do you enjoy like working the outpatient, the early mornings, and having like your specific schedule laid out? Or do you enjoy like the hospital, acute care, and having your 3 days and then you have the rest of your days off and you're good to go? You can kind of like schedule it to where your 3 days are together and you end up like having like 7 days off. And do you like being like really busy and on top of it, or do you like something that's a little more laid back and relaxed? So there's so many like pros and cons to every aspect of it. It literally just depends on the person and like what you're looking for and what works for your life at the moment. So that's what I always tell people. No specialty is like perfect for everyone. You just got to go with what you like and what you enjoy and what you can see yourself doing. So those are all the specialties that I have had over these past 10 years of nursing, which is crazy to think about that it's been 10 years. So I definitely enjoy all of them for different reasons, and I enjoyed my time in all of them, and I've just kind of like progressed to different areas over the years, just based on like my personal experiences or me just wanting to try different things and what works for my schedule at the moment. So that's the great thing about nursing, is that you can kind of like do completely different things with the same degree and just find what works best for you. Alright, so those are all the specialties I have worked in or am currently working, and a little bit about each one, so you can kind of decide, hey, this sounds like me, or this sounds like something I'm not interested in at all. So just kind of go with you, your personality, what you're looking for, the schedule, and the kind of flow that you're looking for your work day, and make the decision that works best for you. It won't always be the same decision, so you can always switch and change it up and go and do different things, but just find what works best for you. Alright, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you have any other videos that you'd like me to talk about regarding nursing, my experience in nursing, or any other questions, definitely put them in the comment section down below.